Olha ele aí, ó. Mas... Nossa, só por causa da peruca do El. Hi, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Without your big hair?
No.
How are you feeling without it?
I feel normal.
Perguntei como é que ele tá se sentindo sem o cabelo. Ele falou que tá normal. Então, beleza. A gente vai bater o papo aqui. Eu já vou ligar minha chave pro inglês aqui, pessoal, tá? Aperta a tecla SAP agora. Talking in English right now, Paul. Yeah. Please sit.
Okay.
Be comfortable. So, we have a lot of things to talk about. If we have time, we can open to the public later.
Yeah. I'd love to hear what questions you have about the show and the program and my shoes.
Eu acho que vocês entenderam, né? Vocês vão ver os textos passando aqui. Ele falou que ele vai falar sobre muita coisa, inclusive sobre os sapatos, tênis dele. Bonitos, Jesus. Beautiful shoes.
Thank you.
Então, vamos começar. Let's begin. Paul, in some interviews, you said you would like to know how Beakman was so popular in Brazil. Did you find the answer?
Well, I kind of figured it out, and I'm interested in your opinions, because I don't know if I'm right or not, but I think there's something about the Latin sensibility that the show really appealed to. And also, the character talked to the audience, directly to the camera. So the kids are sitting at home, and this guy is talking to them. Do you need to translate?
Oh, there are text subtitles here, so everybody's reading. Pessoal, vocês estão conseguindo ler aqui? Tá dando para pegar legal o que ele tá falando? Então, beleza. They are reading the subtitles, so we're fine.
I think what's amazing to me is how emotional people are in Mexico and in Brazil about the show. And emotion is about a connection with a character, eye to eye. And it's a great honor to be loved by such magnificent people. I mean, it really is great.
Yes. Aplausos, muito legal, Paul. Very nice, Paul. And can I call you Paul or Beakman? What do you prefer?
When I'm like this, Paul works better.
Paul works better. Don't say Paul. So who was Paul Zaloom before the scientist Beakman? What were his main jobs?
Well, I've been a puppeteer. How do you say that in Portuguese, puppeteer?
It's a marionette. Marionette.
Marionette. I am a marionette. And I started doing that when I was 19 with a theater company in Vermont. And I still work there 48 years later. And it's been great. I was there this summer. We do giant puppet shows. And my own work, I do political satire and comedy, mainly political stuff, making fun of all the stuff that's basically killing us.
Yes, and Paul, when we talk about Beakman world, where did the inspiration came from?
Well, the show is based on a comic that was in over 300 newspapers in the comic section of the newspapers. And the guy who created it was named Jock Church. And he was the first guy to create a comic in the newspapers on a Mac. And he got this idea to get kids to write into him with questions about science, and then he would answer them. And the great thing about Jock was he was very irreverent and kind of rude, and he empowered children and sort of asked them to question authority, which was really cool. He was a wonderful guy. He had very bad diabetes, and unfortunately he died about 3 or 4 years ago. So the TV show was based on his cartoon that was in the comic section of the paper.
And Paul, I don't know if this cartoon was a little crazy, because you said once that you were the most craziest lunatic they found. Do you agree with that now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, looked for people in Hollywood to play my part, and they just found a lot of like sitcom daddies and just sort of normal people, and they needed someone very abnormal, not normal, and weird. And the director knew me from New York, and he suggested me, and they went for it. So that's how I got the job.
Very nice story, Paul. And when you were a student, right, were you interested in the science universe? I mean, since the beginning of times, since the beginning of your childhood?
I think when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time in the rural part of America, in New England, in Vermont. And being in the woods, living in the woods, that gave me a really strong connection to nature and the natural world and how things work in nature, and that just got me. So that was really my entryway into science.
And talking about nature, I don't know, how is to live such an iconic character as Beakman nowadays?
How what?
Yeah, how was to live such an iconic character like Beakman nowadays? How do you see your past?
I don't know. I you know, when I put on the outfit, I become the guy, and it was a big surprise to me that people here in Latin America, particularly in Brazil and Mexico, like the show so much. I mean, we had no idea until I performed in Mexico City and also in Sao Paulo, and it was crazy. And so, yeah, it's been, because, you know, people don't recognize me. I usually have a beard and I wear a hat and I'm an old man and all that. So people don't recognize an old man walking down the, hey, how are you? You know, they don't recognize me. So I'm not that aware of, you know, my celebrity status or whatever it is.
You're not that old. You're handsome.
Gee, thanks.
And so Beakman World was a huge success, not only with children, but also with adults. What do you think that got the attention from the adults on your show?
Well, about 55% of the audience was adults in the United States. So a majority of the people watching the show was adults. And I asked my neighbor in New York, I said, why do you watch the show? And he said, because the show is a science show for children, I will understand the science. So I think a lot of adults liked it because they said, oh, now I'm going to understand these things that are very difficult to understand. And so and also it looked interesting, the show, because of the director, Jay Dubin. He thinks in pictures, and the pictures were good, that he was always composing the shots like paintings, like a painter would do. And also he knows science really well, and he knows comedy really well. He's from Brooklyn, which is where I come from. I was born in Brooklyn, and he has that New York sense of humor and sensibility, which is, Beakman is kind of New York too, especially after a couple of beers.
We can see in your show, Paul, that you had a lot of improvised scenario. So how was to create this scenario, to create this idea? It was all natural, like a lot of improvisation. How did you work out on that? It was so natural to see you there, you, Lester, Lisa. How did you work out this part of the show?
Well, we would only rehearse one day. We did, 1.5 days. We would read the script for the next week, and then, I think, or maybe that week, and then we would rehearse Monday afternoon and Tuesday, and we would shoot Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we would constantly think of gags, of jokes, of tricks, of visual things to add to it. And, sometimes they would want a dinosaur, and they would say, let's do CGI, let's do blue screen. And we would say, no, let's get a plastic dinosaur and tie a big piece of string around it and drag it through the frame. Because it's funnier, it's weird, it's stupid. And, we've all seen the blue screen and all of that stuff. That was sort of a thing that we wanted to do. I want to explain, too, the way the show was shot was I was never farther away from the camera than this. And there were 2 cameras, and they were touching. And they would set up the shot at the beginning of the day, and then the cameramen would just go get drunk or just leave because there was nothing for them to do. Because the cameras never moved. They didn't move. They didn't zoom in. They didn't zoom out. They stayed right there next to each other. And they had ultra wide angle lens. It's like almost like a fisheye lens. So it distorts everything. And instead of the cameras moving, the performers would move. So I'd be talking to the first camera, and then I'd move to the second camera. And they would pick up the cut on the move. You follow me? So that was the way to make it kinetic. It was a way to give it energy. And it was hard to learn at first because it would be 3 of us, and the director would make us pull each other out of the way and spin each other around. And at first it was really hard. And we had marks on the floor. Usually in theater you have tape on the floor to hit your mark, but you can't look down when you're...
It was an X mark?
I invented it. I said, get some rubber, some raised rubber, and put it on the floor, and I'll feel it with my feet. So the spikes, we call them spikes in the theater. We feel the spikes with our feet.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm going to sit down now.
Don't worry, Paul. Vocês entenderam a dinâmica, pessoal, mais ou menos da gravação? Então, improviso, né? I'm just talking to them about the improvisation, improvise. I think that's an art that not everyone can do, and that's so nice to see because it happens so natural, And was there any favorite science discoveries you did on your show? If you could name your favorite ones?
Well, I don't know if any of you remember the episode where we went up the nose. We did a show about snot, about mucus. And it was in the beginning of the show, and the director said to me, so how would you do snot? We call mucus in America snot. And I said, let's make a hallway and make that a nostril, and we'll have snot in the hallway. And he said, okay, and he used a sonotube, which is a big cardboard thing for pouring foundations, this big, and they put bubble wrap inside, and they wrote NASA on the outside, and they put $700 of Hollywood snot, special effect, green, slimy crap inside, and then I wore like a hazmat suit, so I was like an astronaut. And I went in and, they used broom bristles on the outside for nose hairs. And they actually left me in there and took a break. And I got stuck in the nose for about 15 minutes. And I was saying, could somebody please get me out of the nose? I'm having difficulty breathing. And the executives were in the office like a quarter mile away. And he was panicking. Oh my God, Beakman's gonna die in the nose, covered in snot. And then the snot worked its way down my suit until it was squishing between my toes. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I love show business.
Applause.
Yeah, very nice. Show business is so glamorous. Yeah.
And Paul, you can feel free to stand anytime you want, all right?
What?
You can feel free to stand anytime you want.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I'm going to stand right now.
All right. And so we know that a small group of teachers sometimes criticize the show. I respectfully disagree with them, all right? But they criticize the show because you had, farting stuff, burping stuff, pee stuff. So how did you deal with that?
Well, Lester, as you know, he farted a lot, and we had 1,500 sound effects, an average, in the show. And I helped create the show. I didn't get paid to do it, I just volunteered. They didn't want to pay me, but I volunteered because I thought it would be fun to help invent it. And I think I came up with the idea of the sound effects, but maybe not. But the idea was to make the sound effects be another layer of jokes, another funny layer. And the network didn't want us to do farting. We wanted to do an episode about farting, and the network was like, no, you're not doing farting. You cannot fart and talk about farts to children in America. And finally, the last season, they said, okay, you can do farting. So we did.
Todo mundo tá alinhado aqui com quem é farting, né, pessoal? Então, beleza. Soltar né? Em português, farting would be... vou usar essa palavra, né? Would be peitar.
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 Peitar. I like to peitar. All day long. Wow. You're applauding for that? Oh my word. Okay.
Yeah, we like this a lot in Brazil, believe it. Yeah. So, talking a little bit about your personal life. So, if you can talk to us about, friends, family, your personal hobbies. You like to play video games, to go at the theater, movies, series. Who is Paul at your house?
Well, my obsession is art, actually. Painting and drawing and printmaking. I don't paint and draw very much myself, but I'm really interested in 20th century art, particularly from Weimar Germany between the wars, and social and political art from the United States in the 20s and 30s and 40s. I'm just really into that, and I love going to museums. It's really fun for me. I love looking at paintings. I mean, paintings are amazing because paint is basically made out of dirt, and they're taking dirt and they're turning it into gold. It's like alchemy. So I'm a big sucker for that. And I see a guy in the back going, that's interesting. Well, sorry.
No, in the past, last year, Beakman got in front of the cameras again. And he recorded some episodes for a series on YouTube. So how it was to revive Beakman? How was the acceptance from the audience?
Well, it was for this guy, Captain Disillusion. Has anybody seen his YouTube channel? Yeah, he's cool, right? He basically shows how technically people can fake videos. So there's all these fake videos of amazing things on YouTube, and this guy basically shows how they faked them. And he was so enthusiastic and such a fan and such a cool guy, I said, okay, let's do this thing. And he put me up in a hotel in Florida that was the skankiest hotel I have ever stayed in. The entire place smelled like weed, and there was a cop in a cop car out front 24/7 in front of this place. But I mean, he was a really nice cat. He took me to dinner. We had a really good time. And now I'm criticizing his hotel, but yeah, he's a great cat, and his shows on YouTube are really interesting. Captain Disillusion, I strongly recommend it.
Yeah, that's very nice, because doing new stuff and telling us all those stories. And I'm gonna ask you a strong question right now I have here. I think this is a question for everyone here. So, Paul, what are your dreams?
My dreams,
Your wildest dreams. Not the wildest, but the regular ones as well.
Well, I'd like to see most of the governments of the world overthrown, starting with the United States. I'd like to see global warming reversed. I'd like to see free health care for every human being on the planet.
Vamos, galera.
I mean, we have so many opportunities to be kind to each other, to be good to each other, and it would be great if that was really the focus of humankind right now, you know, that we take care of each other.
Yeah, I think we would need like 100 years of global freezing to balance the global warming. Do you agree?
Yeah, and a lot of trees.
A lot of trees.
Yeah.
And 20 years. More than 20 years of the Beakman World Show, and it was never forgot. So, how do you feel nowadays traveling the world and telling all those stories for new audience and, you know, the old audience as well?
Well, it's a great honor. It's pretty amazing and unbelievable. And what's funny is I go home and tell my friends, oh, I performed in Mexico City and there were 10,000 people in the audience and 1.2 million people watching the live stream. And my friends are like, yeah, sure, I believe you. You know, we have no clue in the States. So it's pretty great. And I told the people in the crew, the writers, the director, the producers, all of the people, the lighting people, I said, you have made a change for people's lives for the better in the world, and I'm trying to get them to realize that because they don't know, and it's important that they know that they feel like, I mean, a lot of them have worked in Hollywood for years on stuff that's not that interesting, and many of them said that Beakman was the most fun and the most rewarding thing they ever worked on. And when we were on the set, we just laughed all day long. We just had a good time and laughed. No fighting, no grumpiness. I remember I went to work one day really grumpy, and there was a visitor to the set who was in a wheelchair. I thought, now that's interesting. And I'm grumpy. It's like, why? I have this great job and all these wonderful people. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun all the time.
That's great to know, Paul, especially for people who want to do that sometime, you know. And you have been to Brazil. I have one last question here, and I think we're going to have 10 minutes for the audience to ask some things. But you have been to Brazil sometimes. What do you think of our country so far? The food, the people, the environments. What do you like the most here in Brazil?
Well, definitely the people. Because the people I meet here are very warm and friendly and kind. And I think the people here, and also in Mexico, I haven't been to other countries in Latin America, they're just warm people. They're not like cold and unfriendly, and that's what really makes a difference. That's like fantastic. And so I know it sounds corny and I'm trying to kiss your ass or something, but it really is true that folks down here are just really warm and emotional, and that's great. That's why I love coming here.
Thank you for the compliments. Aplausos a isso, galera.
Thank you.
Adoro o Brasil. Muito legal essas palavras. Então, vou pedir a gentileza, olha, para terminar, I finished my questions here, so I'm gonna ask someone from the production team to bring microphones so people from the audience can ask you questions.
All right.
I'm gonna talk in Portuguese today right now, very quick. Então, pessoal, nós temos aí 10 minutos. Pessoal da produção, vou pedir a gentileza de já ir se acomodando aqui pelos lados para trazer microfones para quem quiser perguntar. Pessoal, novamente, temos aí cerca de 10 minutos para perguntas. Quem tem perguntas ao Paul, ao Beakman aqui, Paul Zaloom, levanta a mão, por favor, em ordem. Ó, tem um ali que já até se levantou, não só a mão, levantou o corpo inteiro. He raised all his body, not only the hand, you know. So
right.
I think he's gonna be the first one to ask.
Right on.
Microphone. Tá vindo? Vai vir aqui pela frente? Você vai vir aqui pela frente? Não? Você vai vir perguntar aqui? Ah, tá bom. Então vamos, produção. Vai perguntar? Vamos lá. Isso pra mim. É ele que vai perguntar aqui, ó. Rapaz, isso. Obrigado.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, how you doing?
It's about Ray, the camera guy from the Beakman's World. I would like to ask you, we never saw him Was his name actually Ray? Was always the same guy? And is there a picture from him everywhere on the internet?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a picture of him. His name was Ron Jankula, and he was one of the prop guys. But he also, I think, was in AFTRA, or one of the unions. So I think he was allowed to put his hand in because he was in an acting union. And every time he put his hand in, he made like $800. So he loved being Ray. It's like $800, $800. And the whole crew would go cha-ching, cha-ching every time. But it was an idea that came from Suki Sales, who was a kids show host in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in the US, who was a big inspiration for Beakman's world. The way that Suki treated the frame like a frame, that it had an edge. You know, usually the television and movies, they're just the world. But Suki treated it like it's a box and it has an edge. And we see something on this side, but then there's something you don't see on that side. And that adds mystery and weirdness to it. So he had a character called White Fang and Bluetooth, and they were just furry arms that came in and went, and Suki would go, oh, you went to see your mother-in-law today. And then Suki would, you know, there were stupid jokes. And that show, Suki Sales, was really popular with adults. Like Frank Sinatra and his whole crew, they appeared on the show. And there were a lot of pies, they were throwing pies all the time. And so Suki Sales was a big inspiration.
Nice, obrigado pela pergunta. Thank you for the question. Pessoais, temos mais espaço para pelo menos umas duas perguntinhas. A gente havia levantado aqui a mão antes, na sequência a gente avança você, tá bom? Valeu, obrigado.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm so excited. First of all, thank you for my 10 in science for the inertia test. I never thought I would get a 10, but Beakman made it real.
Oh, cool.
I have two questions actually. C one first. I wanted to know how you came about with the penguins at the start, because they are sort of just watching the show and then you break the fourth wall, and I always saw me and my sister as the penguins watching it.
Right.
So how did that idea come about?
You know, I actually don't know how the penguins got on the show. I have no idea. I'm a puppeteer, but I was in 85% of the shots, 90% of the shots. So when they would shoot the penguins, I'd be like, bye, and I'd go home, and I was very happy. But the guy who played Lester, the guy in the rat suit, he was hired to do a puppet on the show. The idea, before the director got there, the idea was, we'll have Beakman and we'll have a young woman assistant, and then we'll have this rat puppet. And the director said, that's a bad idea. The puppet's just going to be, you know, you cut to the puppet and the puppet says something funny or stupid, and then you cut back to Beakman. The puppet can't hold anything. The puppet can't help with demonstrations. He said, the hell with that. Let's have a guy in a rat suit. But the problem was they already hired a puppeteer to do the puppet. And so he showed up. I'll never forget, Mark Ritz was his name. He showed up and we said, well, actually, the puppet is gone. You're going to be a guy in a rat suit. And he was like, what? And he adapted, you know, he was amazing. I mean, he was so good that he sort of required the rest of us to be really good and really pay attention to our performance because he was so talented and did such a good job. And he was also a magnificent human being, just a beautiful, beautiful, loving, warm guy. And I was very close to him. I got really close to him. And unfortunately, he died of cancer about 9 years ago. But yeah, Mark Ritz and the Penguins. And he did one of the Penguins. And a puppeteer in LA did the other penguin.
Legal. Essa outra pergunta, né? E mais uma pergunta.
Yeah, I have a more serious question since you talked about liking political satire. How do you feel nowadays with this post-truth times that we're living in, where vaccines don't matter anymore and almost science that we used to know as facts are being debated and...
Yeah, it's really difficult, I think, for many of us to deal with this. I had to stop watching the news on TV because I would get so angry. And then I had to stop listening to the news on the radio because I would rip the speaker out and stomp on it until it was flat as a postcard. So now I just read the paper, but it makes me crazy. And sometimes I want to post on Facebook, or I want to, and it's the best thing for me to do is to do stuff about it in my work, in my puppet shows. So I have a show about being Caucasian, about being white, and it's called White Like Me, which is a white man. So it's sort of a satire on white people and the colonizations of the Americans and the alienization of people who are other than white. And it's really ends up being about white anxiety. And I actually wrote the show in 2009, 2010. But I haven't made a new show because it just seems so relevant. And I do it with puppets in a little stage, like a little proscenium stage. And I use found objects and action figures and stuff like that. So that's the best way for me to deal with it. And the idea is to get people to laugh about, what's basically going to kill them. And maybe they can laugh enough that they can feel like they can do something about it or feel empowered or something like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Obrigado pelas perguntas. Agora, como prometido, o rapaz de amarelo aí, obrigado.
Eu posso perguntar em português, porque tem um pessoal ali atrás que não está conseguindo ler.
Pode sim, eu traduzo para ele aqui.
Então, primeiro eu gostaria de dizer que eu sou muito fã do Beakman. Estou com o pessoal da Game Escola ali, que eles são grandes fãs do Beakman também.
He's saying that he's a big fan of Beakman, and he's with the guys of Game Escola who are big fans of Beakman as well.
E como grande parte do pessoal que está aqui, além de gostar de ciência, gosta muito de videogame, a gente queria saber se ele já teve algum contato com videogame, talvez Atari, não sei, se ele já teve alguma relação com videogames na vida dele.
Legal a pergunta. He's asking if, besides science, which is your specialization, if you have contact with video games of some sort, Atari, Odyssey, Master System, PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox, you name it.
Yeah, well, I played Mario Brothers in the 80s when they came out for like 2 weeks. And like, oh my God, this is so fabulous. For hours and hours. And I'm playing it, and one day I said, what the hell am I doing? And I actually haven't really played video games since then. I did have, that video game on the phone that was the goat that runs around the city, gets hit by cars and stuff like that, and there's blood everywhere, and I dug that because I like really sick stuff. Like the cameraman here, it looks like he got hit by a goat in the head right there.
Foi atingido pelo quê, hein?
Yeah.
He prefers not to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the goat and your head. Looks like it hurts. I've seen a lot of wounded people here. There's a guy over there, and there's a guy in the back who's bleeding all over the place. But this has nothing to do with your question, but I once thought I want to pay attention to what in the world I find funny. So I just observed myself laughing at stuff, and I was really surprised to find out what I laugh at is the really sick stuff. The blood, the guts, people dying, all of that. I couldn't believe it. It's like, oh my God, I'm that person. I'm a sick human being. But what are you going to do? It is what it is.
Did you play Grand Theft Auto?
No.
you know this franchise, you steal the cars and everyone, it's a very famous one.
Yeah.
That's the kind of game you like.
No. No. I'm an old school guy. I'm an old fart. You know, I like books. I really like books. I like art books. I like reading. I like turning pages. Ooh, what's on the next page? Ooh. I mean, it's a little like the internet, except it isn't. And I don't know. I'm an art fan, or art fanatic. That's my thing. I love design too. You know, you have such amazing tradition in Brazil of architecture. And also modernist design, amazing modernist furniture that was designed in the 50s and 60s in this country, unbelievable. And I'd love to buy some, but it's expensive. That modernist furniture. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Oh, it's a nice perception. Architecture is big in Brazil. Yeah, it's big in Brazil. Yeah. So I think we have space for one last question. Mas uma pergunta.
I want to say, of course, Niedermeyer is unbelievable, and his work is amazing, and I've seen a few of his buildings. But I've also been to Lazar Segal's house in Sao Paulo, and I don't remember the name of the guy who is an architect who designed his house. Designed another house in Sao Paulo.
One of the most famous, he died with more than 100 years. It's Oscar Niemeyer.
Yeah, Niedermeyer.
Niemeyer, yes.
Yeah, I know. He died like 2 years ago.
With more than, you know.
I've seen a few of his buildings. I had friends in Sao Paulo take me around to see and the Brasilia furniture line and all of that. Yeah, super cool.
Thank you for this perception.
Yeah.
Mas uma perguntinha, pessoal. Quem vai fazer o rapaz, o de Walking Dead atrás de você tinha levantado a mão com um machucado ali, produção, por favor. O rapaz, pode se levantar por gentileza, amigão? Isso, obrigado. Estamos indo até aí. He's one of the guys, you know, who, I don't know what happened to him.
Is there a doctor in the house?
Yes. Pode falar inglês? Ou você prefere falar inglês ou quer que eu traduza?
In English.
Manda bem.
Paul, your marionette, the Beakman, is a great inspiration for me in science. And if I made good works with my patients in genetics, you have part in it. I want to ask to Paul, to the master of the marionette, what do you think about the consequences of the new wave of anti-intellectualism and anti-science in the world, like flat Earth and these things?
Yeah, I mean, it's horrifying, it's disgusting, but it's happened before in history. We're in another dark ages. And a guy asked me in an interview earlier, do you think Beakman, the program, the show, can work against that? You know, does Beakman's World allow people to take science seriously? And it's a really interesting question, because the show is silly and it looks goofy and it's got lots of jokes. But I think somehow because of that, it's possible to believe that what the guy is saying is true. So it's interesting. I mean, I think facts and information, that's a good thing. And, hopefully this anti-intellectual thing will pass and things will get better.
We hope so, Paul. I think that's it. Eu acho que é isso, galera. A gente teve um papo, não sei vocês, mas eu achei sensacional. Obrigado a todos que fizeram as perguntas, foram muito legais, tanto por envolver questões pessoais aqui do Paul, quanto por ir além da ciência do que ele falou. So, Paul, thank you very much for being here in Brazil.
I just want to thank you all for coming today. It was very kind of you to listen to me blab. But also, I'm doing a show on the stage on Sunday at 6:30. And it's about the brain. It's about neuroscience. So if you have a chance, it's about 45 minutes long, and there's some jokes, and it should be, not so. So I hope you have a chance to come and check it out.
É isso, galera, muito bem lembrado. Ele vai estar aqui de volta no domingo como Beakman, não somente como Paul Zaloom. Então, quem estiver aqui, acho que vai estar mais cheio ainda, porque é fim de semana. Compareça, é isso. Oh, thank you very much. Uma salva de palmas para ele aqui, galera.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you. I love you, Brazil. Thank you so much. Thank you. See ya.